Congressman Mark Pocan is on the line with us, member brilliantly representing the second District of Wisconsin. His website, Pocan, POCAN.house.gov. Congressman, welcome back.
Well, thank you very much, Tom.
It's great to have you with us. First of all, I'm curious your thoughts on the Affordable Care Act that just passed.
You know, we're just really glad. We've been told all along that we felt very confident in the legal standing on it. Now that's been confirmed, and now we have to make states like my home state of Wisconsin, make Governor Walker quit worrying about running for president and do something for the people of Wisconsin and take the Medicaid expansion money, and let's embrace this. So we now have the Supreme Court decision. Let's move forward.
Yeah, it seems to me like there's a couple of steps here. The first one that need to be done. The first one is to make sure that these Republican-controlled states that are trying to keep this, and by the way, as Paul Krugman pointed out, all but one of them were slaveholding states. That these Republican-held states that are refusing to expand Medicaid do so, number one. Number two, that we fix Medicare Part D so that the government can negotiate for drug prices, because that's rippling all across everything. It's you know, and that industry has made $20 billion now since they spent $170 million lobbying for that and hiring Billy Towson. And number three is to fix Obamacare by adding a public option to it, the option of buying into Medicare, as you know, as opposed to getting your health care from an insurance company. Your thoughts?
You know, we've had that in our Progressive Caucus version of the budget, specifically on the a public option. In fact, we would probably fix the excise tax that affects some of you know, workers' plans through their unions, and you could easily fund that through a public option and expand health care even more. So we've been advocating for that, and now we can kind of maybe move forward with the law rather than keep looking back and trying to vote on its repeal and saying it's not constitutional because it's now passed the right muster to do that. Right.
So on the original topic that we booked you on, which is the fast track and TPP and all these trade deals, the Trade Promotion Authority, also known as Fast Track, has passed both the House and Senate and gone to the White House for signature. Do I have that right?
Yeah, just the final, the TAA, along with the GOA, the African Trade Bill, just passed the House, which we expected to, and actually we all did support at this point. But really, we realized that it's time to pivot to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Yeah. That, you know, now that we've got it, that we're not going to have any direct say through amending it, and we're going to have very limited debate. We've got to do everything we can now to try to hold them accountable for what they told us, as they said they wanted our votes. Right.
So the TAA has already passed the Senate, has it?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and it just passed the House.
So everything now is on its way to the White House. The president will sign both TPA and TAA along with the Africa Trade Bill. I think the only thing that's kind of out there still is the Customs Bill, where some of the amendments that Republicans put on in order to get Republican votes for TPA. For example, Jim Sensenbrenner from Wisconsin had an amendment that's saying you can't have any climate change treaty within the agreement. What's going to be interesting is if that stuff is true, and we saw a letter from Ambassador Froman, the U.S. Trade Representative, saying there will be no climate change treaty within here, we got some explaining to do from the administration, because we've also been told other things about what was in there around climate change, and I've seen some things in a classified setting I can't explicitly say, but we do need clarification on what that amendment means, and other amendments that took away the human trafficking provisions that the Senate had in there, specifically about Malaysia, took away some of the currency provisions. Right. Some things that actually made it better are now not in there, and we got to find out how that's going to move forward.
Is it possible that so now basically the skids have been greased, right? If one of these so-called trade deals, even though most of what they deal with is not trade, it's restructuring the international economy. Yeah. If one of these bills, let's say TPP as a starting point, then there's TTIP, the transatlantic one coming up, and then the TISA, the one in services. If any of these come up, they actually do have to be revealed to the public for, what, 60 days before they're voted on?
Yes, 60 days is what it's supposed to be. But now we have just given up our authority for the next 6 years on any future trade agreement to have the ability to amend or to, we're going to have limited debate. So we just gave it to this president, the next president, and potentially the next president on any future trade deal. We now have shut ourselves out.
Right. But in the process, I mean, it can still be defeated by a 50% vote. Now, this is going to require large numbers of Republican defections. But do you think that when the actual content of the TPP becomes evident, that there will be the same kind of groundswell there was around, for example, net neutrality, where Tom Wheeler, the former lobbyist for the telecom industry, the head of the FCC, was gung ho not to have net neutrality, and then all of a sudden 4 million people dropped petitions on his desk, and he changed his mind. I mean, is it possible that we can still defeat TPP when it comes forward?
I really believe that. I just overheard a Republican on the floor not 20 minutes ago tell someone I voted against TPA because 95% of the people in my district were against it. We really got hit hard by NAFTA. So when you hear that, and if we can make sure that once we see this language, if it's going to be what I know it's going to be, because I've already went 3 times into a classified room and saw what's already negotiated, we see how bad it is. Then the people who said, we'll give the White House the benefit of the doubt, see if they can negotiate a better deal, we'll know we don't have a better deal. And at that point, we can be very concrete. And I think the fact that some of these amendments that got put on, climate change is either going to be in it or it's not going to be in it, but you can't play it both ways. And right now, I think it's being played both ways because allegedly, you didn't have the final document. We'll have the final document, and we'll know whether they were telling us the truth or someone else the truth, but that may also bring some votes in.
So you're talking about this ban on any kind of international climate change activity. Was that associated with the TPA with fast track?
That was an amendment put on in order to get votes for TPA, and Jim Sensenbrenner from Wisconsin put out a press release saying, hey, look, this passed, and I got a letter from Ambassador Froman saying, don't worry, there won't be any climate change treaties within here. But I can tell you that's different than conversations we've had. So we want clarity on this because, again, I think in the end, someone was lied to. We just got to figure out who it is and whose votes that moves.
So
because you can't have things to affect climate change and say you're not going to in the same.
So the bill that went to the fast track authority that went to the president actually it was conditional, like this applies to trade treaties that. But it doesn't apply to trade treaties that contain, for example, international agreement on climate change?
Well, it said you can't have within the Trans-Pacific Partnership anything about climate change. Now, that's an amendment in the customs bill, and that still has to go through the Senate and could, through a conference committee, be potentially removed.
Oh, okay. So this is a separate piece of legislation.
Tell me which, but it's all part and parcel. We had 4 votes that were all part of this vote. It was the customs vote, the TPA, the TAA, and then the AGOA. But, how many Republicans are going to say, no, I think we should have climate change language in here? So, some of those have a good chance of staying. And if they stay, then what does that mean to those of us who've been promised that this environmental chapter is not worse than previous environmental chapters?
Right. It means we've been lied to once again.
Someone has been lied to.
Yeah. Geez. When do you expect the TPP is going to get dropped, Congressman?
We don't know that exactly. We all assumed it'd be before the end of the year. We know that, when you get to the August break, things are a little tougher to move unless they have great consensus because of the presidential election. I would find it hard to believe that it could come in the next month, but, some people are talking, they think it could. From what I've seen in a classified setting without saying any of the particulars, there are still a number of things to be resolved with, you think about it, there's countries like Malaysia and Vietnam that don't have a lot in common with some of the other countries that are in the trade deal.
Right.
And I just would be surprised if it happened in the next
Do you
month.
think it's possible that Congress will simply wait until after the next election, until November of next year, and then just after the election, as they have done, by the way, in the past with a number of things, during the Christmas recess, this is the end, it's a lame duck session of Congress, and a new president is coming in, has not yet taken office, and at that point they would drop it and pass it?
What I can tell you is from what I watched in the last few weeks, anything is possible.
Anything is possible. Brilliant. Congressman Mark Pocan, one of the best members of the U.S. House of Representatives, representing the 2nd District of Wisconsin. His website, pocan.house.gov. Congressman, thanks so much for dropping by today.
Thank you, Tom.
Great talking.